Introducing YouTube memberships, a fun way to support the channel while getting some exclusive perks. Click the join button to become a member now and get benefits like badges next to your name on videos, behind-the-scenes photos, advantages during the live trivia game, discounts on merchandise, private one-on-one video chats, the ability to request future video topics, and exclusive 8 to 10 minute videos on the history of the NFL. And now, on with our feature presentation. September 15th, 1996. It's week 3 of a brand new NFL season, and we've got a big interconference game on our hands over at Lambeau Field between the San Diego Chargers and the Green Bay Packers. This was a battle between two of the best teams in all football on paper. In one corner, the undefeated 2-0 San Diego Chargers, who in the last 2 seasons have made the playoffs twice and have gone 20-12. In the other corner, the undefeated 2-0 Green Bay Packers, who also in the last 2 seasons have made the playoffs twice and have gone 20-12. The winner of this game keeps their incredible start to the season alive, goes to 3-0, and becomes one of the early favorites to win the Super Bowl. And this was one of those games where everything went incredibly right for one team and incredibly wrong for the other. Because as you're going to be able to tell throughout this video, this game was complete and utter domination for the Green Bay Packers, who destroyed the Chargers by a final score of 42-10 in a bloodbath of epic proportions that nobody saw coming. You name a stat, and the Packers dominated it. The Packers had more than double the yardage that the Chargers had, winning that battle 336-141. The Packers had more than double the number of first downs, winning that battle 23-11. Whereas the Packers had a decent day on the ground, running for 132 yards, the Chargers got nothing going, having just 33 yards on roughly 2.5 yards per carry. Green Bay's vaunted defensive line, led by Sean Jones and the incomparable Reggie White, had 5 sacks, making Stan Humphrey's day a living nightmare. The Chargers turned it over 3 times. They went just 2 for 12 on 3rd down compared to the Packers, who converted at a 60% clip. And the Chargers held onto the ball for just 21 minutes, with the Packers having roughly 65% of the possession. All in all, it was a dominant day for the Packers, where it seemed like nothing could go wrong. That was, at the very least, on the field. Because off the field, it was a very different story. It was a controversy that you wouldn't know about on the broadcast, because why would you? Seeing as it had very little to do with the game itself, and only impacted people in the state. But it was a controversy that impacted a fair amount of fans who attended this game at Lambeau Field, who might not have been all that happy to make the trek there, considering where they had to come from. Because prior to this game between the Packers and the Chargers in 1996, there was a massive controversy involving Packer fans, and of all the companies in the world, Amtrak. And with the 2 teams playing each other today, if you're watching at the time that this video drops, it seems like a good time to talk about this bizarre controversy. Because this is the story behind the drama between the Packers and Amtrak. Before I talk about the actual controversy in question, we need some context to understand the Packer fans who attended this game in the first place. I'm not going to dive too much into the weeds of this issue, because that's an entire documentary worth of information, but I'll give the Spark Notes or Cliff Notes version, or whatever you want to call it. For most NFL teams, if you buy season tickets, you're buying for the entire season. You want to buy season tickets for the Detroit Lions? You're getting tickets to all 8 home games. You want to buy season tickets for the Seattle Seahawks? Same thing. You get all 8 home games. But the Packers are not like most teams, because for more than 60 years, the Packers split their home games between Green Bay and Milwaukee, with the team playing at this venue right here, Milwaukee County Stadium, ever since the venue opened up in 1953. It was a measure designed to give the team a much-needed cash influx, and the deal worked so that the Packers would play approximately 3 games a year in the city, although that number was as high as 4 games in 1978 and 1980. And it sometimes worked out in a bizarre way, as during the strike-shortened 1982 season, the Packers actually played more games in Milwaukee than they did in Green Bay. If you want to learn more about this arrangement, click the card in the upper right corner. But for years, this was how it worked out. However, after the 1994 season, that ended. Milwaukee County Stadium was becoming incredibly outdated and was showing its age. And after much-needed renovations to Lambeau Field were completed, with a capacity being larger than that of the stadium in Milwaukee, it didn't make a whole lot of sense for the Packers to play games there anymore. It was taking a toll on the players having to travel to more games than any other team, and the team was starting to lose money compared to if they just played all 8 home games in Green Bay. With that, after the 1994 season, the Packers made it official and became like every other team. For the first time since 1932, which was so long ago that the chocolate chip cookie literally did not exist, the Packers were going to play their entire home slate in Green Bay, and would say goodbye to Milwaukee after nearly 6 decades and a lot of good memories there. Having said that, this didn't mean that Milwaukee fans were left out in the cold. The last thing that the Packers wanted to do was alienate their fan base like that and take away their tickets, which have been passed from generation to generation. So the Packers came up with a somewhat brilliant compromise at the time, which has undergone a ton of scrutiny today because of the crowd difference between the games at hand, but was genius back in the 90s. The Packers offered 2 season ticket packages, the green package and the gold package. Anyone who had season tickets to the 3 Milwaukee games would get the gold package, and would get season tickets to 3 games at Lambeau Field, getting access to 1 preseason game and 2 regular season games, with those games being the 2nd and the 6th game of the year. The move was a resounding success, as 96% of Milwaukee fans put their name on the list, and were willing to make the 120-mile trek 3 times a year to watch their Packers play, or try and sell the tickets and turn a profit. But that's another story for another day. Definitely can't think of any game this year where that was the case. And this meant that this game right here, the battle between the Packers and the Chargers, which was the 2nd home game of the year for Green Bay at Lambeau Field, was a gold package game, meaning that Milwaukee fans got in. And that's the SparkNotes version of how Milwaukee fans got into this game. However, there's an obvious problem with having a fan base in Milwaukee come to a game 120 miles away, and that is the issue of transportation. Let's face it, a lot of people who might have been able to simply carpool to the stadium, or take a bus to the stadium, or something along those lines, might not be comfortable driving all that distance to Green Bay. It's a 2-hour hike, and that's without traffic. Add the obvious traffic into the mix, and it could be a nightmare. If only there was some method of transportation that fans from Milwaukee could take, where they don't have to drive and spend money on gas and whatnot, so they could attend the games in Green Bay. Enter the train. Enter Amtrak. Amtrak had discontinued service from Milwaukee to Green Bay in 1971, so for a quarter century, Green Bay was not being serviced whatsoever by Amtrak via the rails. However, in conjunction with the National Railroad Museum, which happens to be based in Green Bay, that was about to change. Because thanks to this revived service, Amtrak would be providing service for fans between Milwaukee and Green Bay, specifically for the purpose of the game. The train would leave the station at 6 o'clock, would arrive in Green Bay at 10:15, and from there, a complimentary bus would take fans from the station to the stadium for the 12 o'clock game. Fans had ridden the rails to and from Green Bay for games for years until the early 1960s, and with the gold package of games, this seemed like a logical time to bring it back. As State Representative Mark Green said on this helps on a small scale with traffic problems, and it's great for tourism. And in theory, it's tough to argue with that. You had to book your ticket in advance, but all in all, this seemed like a flawless idea. That is, until you dive a bit deeper past the surface, and realize that this idea had many, many problems, some of which were absolutely comical. For one, driving from Milwaukee to Green Bay takes somewhere in the ballpark of 2 hours. If you're a Packer fan coming in from Milwaukee, you could easily leave your place at 8 o'clock, or even 9 o'clock if you want to push it, and make it to the game. The train, on the other hand, is much slower. The train was leaving the depot at 6 o'clock, which meant that fans would have to get up somewhere around 4:30 to start their day and drive down to the station. And there's a lot of people that don't want to do that. Sleep for an extra 2.5 hours and drive while listening to the radio? Or sit in a train car with other people and wake up at the crack of dawn? And then, the commute back would be a nightmare via train. Sure, getting out of the Lambeau Field parking lot might not be ideal, but once you're on the road, it's 2 hours back. So you're back at your home by 6 o'clock or thereabout. Take the train after leaving your house around 5 in the morning, and you're not getting back to the depot until somewhere around 8 o'clock. That's a lot of time being wasted if you take the train versus taking the car. And let's face it, that's a big drawback, especially because if you take the train, you're not going to get to the stadium in time to tailgate. Meanwhile, if you take the car, you could. But if the value was there, that wouldn't be a problem. Look, it's not my cup of tea, but some people just like being on the rails and have no problem with that. And it's not like they expected every single fan to take Amtrak from Milwaukee to Green Bay for this game that you've been watching this whole time. The train held 1,000 people, and while they were expecting it to be packed, that's still less than 2% of the fans that would be at Lambeau Field for this game. As for the value, however, well, this is where this goes from a smart idea that might not be everyone's cup of tea to an absolutely moronic decision that I don't know how anyone in their right mind thought this would work. If you take your car to the game, it costs $7 to park, or $13.73 today. Honestly, not terrible. Now you might have to fill up for a tank of gas along the way, but the price of gas was just $1.23 per gallon back in 1996, or $2.28 today. Tanks typically had around 17 gallons back then, so it would cost around $20.91 to fill your tank, or $38.76 in today's money. This means that to take the trek via car from your house to Green Bay, which takes a shorter amount of time, it costs $7, at around $28 if you stop for gas. In today's money, it costs, in the absolute worst case scenario with parking and stopping for gas, somewhere around $50. Want to know how much the train cost? Want to know how much this service from Milwaukee to Green Bay cost? Go ahead, take a guess, because whatever number you're thinking of, it's going to blow your mind. It cost a whopping $99 to take a coach ticket from Milwaukee to Green Bay, and $199 if you wanted a first-class ticket. And this was in 1996 money. This was not in today's money. If you just wanted a regular coach ticket, it would cost you $195 in today's money. And if you wanted a first-class ticket, it would cost you over $390 today. Remember, this is for a trip that takes significantly longer, where you're with other drunk people, where you're leaving earlier than you want, where you're arriving back to your home later than you want, and where you can't really tailgate. And this is for one person. Remember that a lot of people don't go to football games alone. Let's say you're a family of 4, and all 4 of you want to go to the game. Take the car without stopping for gas, and it's the same price as it would be for one person. $14. Take the train with a coach ticket, so the cheapest ticket possible, and you're spending over $776. Let's see in today's money. $14 to go to this game, or $776? Which one sounds better? I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say it's the one that is 55 times cheaper. For some perspective, if you wanted to go to Disney World in 1996, a one-day ticket costs $38.50, or $75.50 in today's money. In today's money, you could buy 2 days worth of park tickets for your family of 4 and still have about $200 left over compared to the absolute cheapest package to take the train from Milwaukee to Green Bay and back. Some value right there. How could anyone possibly justify that cost? Especially when it's more convenient to drive. That is one of the worst value propositions I've ever seen in my life. I want to highlight just how bad this value was even further, because I cannot fathom this whatsoever. In 1996, if you wanted to buy an end zone seat at Lambeau Field, it cost $28. That meant that this train ticket of $99, or $199 if you sat in first class, was about 4 times more expensive than the actual ticket for the game. You could buy an end zone seat to 7 of the 8 home games that the Packers had in 1996, and would still have money left over, because it costs less for that than it would be to buy a first class ticket for a significantly less convenient option than driving. Truly one of the worst business models ever. Which is why it will come as no surprise that when you combine a poor marketing plan with some of the worst value ever, Amtrak, just 1 day before the game, decided to cancel the ride. Because shocker, not a lot of people signed up, and they'd be operating at a loss. Who could have possibly seen that coming? Tim Tennant, the assistant general manager for the National Railroad Museum, said on this, "We, as a nonprofit, could not incur a substantial loss. We are disappointed. We thought it was a good concept." And yeah, it was a good concept. You're not wrong there. But the execution was laughably bad. It's like if Steve Jobs came up with a concept for the iPhone and said that it was going to start at $40,000. Great concept, but good luck getting people to buy that. Because even though 1,000 people were expected to ride the train, a grand total of 150 people ended up making reservations, meaning that it was only going to operate if it ran at 15% capacity. My guess is that it was elderly fans who couldn't drive and who were up at that hour, because that's about the only group of people I could see actually dishing out money for this. And this meant that at the very last minute, some fans in Milwaukee had to arrange for transportation to the stadium, because this whole thing was just a giant debacle that went off the rails. For the Packer fans who attended Lambeau Field and saw their team beat up on the Chargers in the game between these teams behind me right here, it seemed like absolutely everything went right on the field. And that's because it did. But off the field, obviously, was a whole nother issue, as evidenced with this debacle between Amtrak and Green Bay. Now, to this day, there are still no passenger trains between Milwaukee and Green Bay, as that service has still been discontinued since 1971, so for more than half a century at this point. Could something like this work with the Gold package today? Absolutely. There's something about taking the train that a lot of people like. A lot of people don't like driving and getting out of the parking lot. And if this was priced at a reasonable cost, and I cannot stress that enough, a reasonable cost, I could see people doing this. I could see this business plan working. And maybe it will help these games in the Gold package stop being swarmed with opposing fans. But this idea in 1996, a complete and utter disaster in terms of the execution. As a side note, if you are a Packer fan with the Gold package and you remember this controversy, let me know in the comments down below. Some things in life are great ideas with horrible execution, and the train service for this game right here between the Packers and the Chargers absolutely falls in that category. A train service to Green Bay from Milwaukee for the games where Milwaukee fans have tickets? Great idea. A train service that, for a family of 4, costs 55 times more than just driving to the game? Not a great idea. Because nothing about the actual execution of this plan made any sense at all. Not the least of which was the absurd price point. And with that in mind, it's no surprise that this grand plan got completely derailed. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.